What's going on, you guys? My name is Cody Thixton, and this is Interesting Podcast. Coming to you guys live on February 27th, 2026 for episode 121, where tonight we have the return of one of my favorite guests. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute privilege to reintroduce to you guys Jack Hammer.
I had to hit my taunt, Cody. How you doing, buddy? It's so good to see you again.
Oh, dude, it is so awesome to have you here. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I really enjoy coming on the podcast. I know it's been a little while. I've been on twice before, I think. But we always have good chats. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it was actually 3 times. And
Three times. There you go.
A year and a half since we've last talked. And you're the first guest to actually come on 4 different times. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Well, let's just start out for all the people who maybe don't know you. Maybe you can reintroduce your name, where you're from, and what you've been up to since the last time we talked.
Yeah. So I'm Jack Hammer, one half of the Hammer Brothers, the current POW Tag Team Champions and probably forever Prestige Tag Team Champions. And I'm originally from Lincoln City, Oregon. I now live in Kaiser, Oregon. My brother Sledge and I have been active as independent wrestlers, mostly in the Pacific Northwest for the last about 4 years, coming up on 4 years here pretty quick. But yeah, we're one of the local tag teams. We were trained at Oregon Pro Wrestling School, and we've been doing it for a while now. We're having a blast, and we hope that we can keep the momentum going.
That is really awesome. Well, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is I saw this poster from Oregon Pro Wrestling School about tryouts, and it was you and Sledge and Amira. And like, how was that whole experience going to maybe a tryout where other people were trying it? Like, did you kind of explain anything to these up and coming, hopefully, talent about like what to expect?
So funny thing, we were not there. They used our images, I think, to just kind of, which Amira might have been there, but Sledge and I didn't go.
Okay.
I think they put us on the poster to kind of advertise the school and show like, hey, here are some of the local wrestling stars who came through the school. So this could be you, kind of a thing. So I didn't get to go. I did hear about it. I know they've done some of those in the past. I was trying to get a buddy of mine to go, a friend who grew up watching wrestling just like we did, and I've been trying to get him to, try it out. I think he'd be good at it. He didn't end up doing it, but I heard it went really well. I think those tryouts are a really cool thing for the school. I think it's a great way for local fans to kind of dip their toe in the water and see what pro wrestling's all about, kind of behind the scenes. And it's a nice way for people, if they don't want to make the commitment right off the bat, to sign up for the school, because it is, you got to pay some money to do it, and it's a time commitment and all of that. So I think it's a nice way for people to just kind of try it out and see if it's for them. Ricky Gibson told me some stories in the past about how, he knew some people who were, great athletes in high school, and there was no reason to believe that they wouldn't be successful as pro wrestlers, at least with the physical part of it. And he said that, he knew people like that who got into the ring and took one bump and rolled out and said, no way, this is not for me. So, so yeah, we weren't able, unfortunately, to experience that, but I heard a lot about it. I heard it went really well. And, again, I think that's an awesome thing that Ricky does, because it gives people a little taste of what it's like to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah. So, like, how do you feel about OPWS, like, moving into a new building and then being able to expand their how many students they can have? And, like, we've gotten to a point to where, like, there's a wait list just to be able to get into Oregon Pro Wrestling School? Like, how do you feel about that, kind of looking from the outside in?
I'm super proud of Ricky and so excited for him. He's worked so hard to build that school, and it's awesome to see how much it's grown. I have gotten to see the new facility a few times when we were kind of prepping for that final Prestige Roseland show. I went over there several times. We shot some promo stuff, and I stored some of the construction gimmicks that we used in that construction site match, which I know we're going to get to. I stored some of that stuff at the school so that it was easy to take it over to the Roseland Theater. It's huge now. When I first started training, the facility, which was in the same business park but a different unit, it was much smaller. Ricky only had one ring. There wasn't a ton of space. So he certainly would not have been able to have the number of students that he has now in that building. So it was necessary for him to upgrade and expand the space. But it's really incredible what he's done with that building. He's got basically like a full-on weight room at this point. He's got, free weights and some machines and a squat rack. He's got 2 rings now in there. And one of the coolest things I think about the school, and he had started doing this when Sledge and I were training, but he's really expanded on this also. He's got all kinds of memorabilia, T-shirts and action figures, and it's WWE guys, it's local guys with their T-shirts hanging all over the wall. The way that he's decorated the place is really cool, and it's super professional. And when I first started training back in 2015, the school that I was at, they did a good job too, but Ricky's really kind of blown that out of the water. Like the experience that I had at Oregon Pro Wrestling School was incredible, and I'm just so happy for Ricky. It's kind of every wrestler's dream to be able to make a living doing wrestling. And because of the school, I think Ricky is able to do that. So I'm so happy for him. He's, been wrestling for 20 plus years now. And, he's got such a wealth of knowledge to share with everybody. And I think anybody who gets the opportunity to train at Oregon Pro Wrestling School is really fortunate, because I had some experiences prior to training at Oregon Pro Wrestling School that weren't the best. And, I'm just so grateful that I got the opportunity to train under Ricky. And so, yeah, anybody who's thinking about becoming a pro wrestler, if you're from the area, I know there's a wait list now, there's a high demand, but it's such a wonderful experience. And even if you just want to try it out, for a lot of people, it doesn't work out, and that's okay. But I think it's an experience that you won't forget, even if you don't go on to have a long career or whatever. Really, really cool place, a lot of great people. And I'm hoping to be able to visit the school a little bit more now that I'm in Kaiser. I've gone up a few times, like I mentioned, but Sledge and I, since we started working shows, haven't been able to go as much as we'd like. Life gets in the way. You got family responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a wonderful facility. Ricky has done a dynamite job with that place.
That is really cool. Well, I don't know if I've ever actually shared this with any wrestler to kind of go back off of that. But in August of 2024, I actually went to the Oregon Pro Wrestling School tryout and tried it myself. And when you actually take a bump for the first time, I could definitely see why a lot of people are like, I don't know if I could actually do this. like, were you expecting the mat to be as hard when you actually hit your first bump?
Yeah, I think it was, I was fortunate because I grew up playing a lot of contact sports. Like when I played football, I got blasted, so, it's definitely different because I grew up with Sledge wrestling on the trampoline. And I think a lot of people get this idea in their heads that the wrestling ring is like a trampoline, and it's not at all. It's much harder. It's got some give to it. When you go to a wrestling show, you can see, especially when Sledge is in there, that it bounces a little bit. But again, under the canvas, you've got a little bit of foam padding, you've got a bunch of wooden planks, and then you've got steel like cross beams, and so the ring is designed in such a way that it's got a little give to it. It's not like hitting a concrete floor, but it still doesn't feel great, and that's why so many wrestlers who wrestle for a long time have a lot of physical problems, because it's not like bouncing around on a trampoline. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was a shock the first time that I took a bump, but your body kind of gets used to it. Is one funny thing about it. Even when I came back, so I've probably told this story, but I wrestled briefly in 2015, 2016, mostly, well, all of it was for West Coast Wrestling Connection. And I wrestled for about a year, wasn't really having a great time. I was doing it by myself at that time, so I gave it up for a while until Sledge showed interest, and we became the Hammer Brothers, went and trained at Oregon Pro Wrestling School. And in that time off, that was let's see, we went and started training in like 2021-ish. So, 5 years or so where I had not been wrestling. And I think that first week when I started training at Oregon Pro Wrestling School, my body felt it, because I hadn't been doing it for so long. And your back hurts, your neck hurts. The funny thing is, just from when you bump, they teach you to tuck your chin so that you don't smash the back of your head into the mat. And it's something that I feel like it's one of my best, kind of fundamental skills is bumping. And I tuck my chin hard. And the funny thing is, when I haven't bumped for a while, when I do it a little bit, it's actually like the front of my neck that gets sore just from like tucking my chin so hard, just using those muscles. So, yeah, I mean, at first if you bump for a little while, you'll be feeling it. But as you do it more and more, if it becomes kind of a routine, if you're working shows every weekend or you're training all the time, your body starts to get used to it. It never feels great, but you become, kind of conditioned for it, I guess. So, yeah, it's not easy, but kudos to you for going to the school and trying it out, because, and how did you like it? How was that experience? Did you have fun doing it?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of fun. There was one time where we were doing the front flip into a bump,
Hmm.
and I actually hit my head because I didn't tuck it enough. I
Uh-huh.
was more focused on my neck when I was doing the roll, and then I hit my head. And Ricky was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I started seeing stars.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, but it's all good. I mean, it's gonna happen. And then after the actual, going through everything, it was really difficult for me to sit down because we had gone through so many leg exercises and whatever. And he
Uh-huh.
asked everybody at the end of the tryout, like, "Are you guys sore?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sore." Like, it was fun though. A lot of fun. Definitely a very big learning experience. Definitely.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So, do you mind me asking you about the WCWC? Because I was actually at all of those events when they were in Salem, and
Uh-huh.
it seemed like the promotion was like a little bit off, like a little bit awkward. Did you kind of feel that when you were performing for them at, the time in which you started, and maybe that's what drove you to not continue it?
Well, there were a lot of things going on. I thought that, as far as the product, like that the fans saw, in my opinion, I thought it was just fine. I wrestled a bit at the Scottish Rite Center. They ran shows there in Salem.
Yeah.
I worked some student shows at the Grapplers Pro Wrestling Training Academy, um, which was out by the airport in Salem. And then I also worked a little bit on their TV show. At the time, they had a television show on the local Portland station on Saturday nights is when it would air. And as far as the shows themselves, I had a good experience. I was brand new, and um, you kind of go through some things when you're first starting off. It was just kind of a different culture then, different vibe. Some of the people who were in positions of power um, maybe weren't as friendly or welcoming
Right.
as some of the people now.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of the same faces. Like I first met Ricky Gibson when I actually wrestled him on a student show when I was working for WCWC. I met Caden Cassidy at that time. I met Flex at that time. Eddie Pearl and I were kind of like ships in the night. Right as I was leaving, he was getting started. So a lot of familiar faces, but um, I think the reason that I didn't have a great time was that I'm such a creative type, and at that time I had the Hammer Brothers gimmick. I had been working on that for a long time, and for many years it wasn't even a thing that I thought I would actually put to use. It was just kind of for fun. And we've talked about it. I think you've talked to Sledge about it. How I had a PowerPoint presentation with everything you could think of, all the merchandise and the different attires and everything. And
Yeah.
so even at that time, I had that ready to go. And when the time came where I felt like it was appropriate, I pitched that to my trainers and the owner of the company, and um, they kind of blew it off and basically said, you're new, you don't get to have this elaborate gimmick or decide what you're going to be, and they kind of slapped me with a generic sort of thing. And that's I'm not the only person that happened to. Like that's pretty standard. But for me, here I was driving. I was living in Portland at the time, and I was driving from Portland to Salem 3 times a week to train, and then I was working shows for them. And I'm kind of putting my body through hell as wrestlers do, and not making any money. In fact, I was losing a lot of money because I was paying them a lot to train me, and I'm spending a lot of money on gas and all this. And um, I was spending so much time training that I was really not able to work like a normal full time job. I was working as much as I could, but um, I had to sort of work around the wrestling because I was trying to commit myself to that. And I was younger. I was 25, and I maybe didn't manage my time or my money as effectively as I could have. But basically, I just I wanted to be creative and do this thing, and they shut it down and slapped me with a gimmick that was really no gimmick, and I just wasn't having fun with it. And I tried to make the best of it and do it for as long as I could. Um, but it just, part of it was I was broke, and then I wasn't having fun, and I'm beating myself up, and it was always kind of my dream too to do it with Sledge, and he wasn't doing it with me at that time. So um, yeah, I just decided to give it up. But as far as the shows themselves, they were fine. The only thing that was kind of a bummer is that um, the owner of that company didn't. He was very competitive, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but a lot of the guys who worked there wanted to go work for other places, like DOA was going on at the time. And they basically, at least for most of us, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I guess some of the guys I trained with and stuff, it was the same deal, but they weren't allowed. I was not allowed to go wrestle for DOA. It was kind of like, if you're going to train here and work for us, this is where you're working. You don't go to DOA. You don't, and that's obviously not the case anymore, where everybody's treated as an independent contractor where you go and work for whoever wants to book you on their show. And at this level, you're not making a lot of money. We try to present ourselves as being these superstars, and just like you see on TV with WWE and AEW and all the other, TNA, whatever. But the reality is, and I think everyone kind of knows this, that at this level, we're all just kind of average dudes living out our dream, hoping that maybe we'll get signed. It's probably not going to work out for most of us, pretty much all of us. So it's really kind of a hobby because we don't make a ton of money doing it. So it's helpful if you get to work for other companies so you can make a little bit more money. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
you work for one company and they run 2 shows a month, that kind of makes it hard. One, it makes it hard to get reps so that you can get better. And then two, you're just not able to get the exposure and make some more money. And so that was kind of my experience with that. I don't like speaking ill of anybody. And I had, again, I had a lot of good experiences while I was there. But I will say that the scene is much better now than it was then. There are a lot more companies to work for. People seem to be much more friendly and welcoming and open to ideas and collaboration. And the Oregon Pro Wrestling School is way beyond what was going on in Salem at the time, as far as the quality of the training, um, the quality of the facility itself, all of it. It's much better now than it used to be. So
Yeah. Well, that is really cool. Well, I know I wanted to ask you about people who go to Oregon Pro Wrestling School and they graduate. You kind of have to have the nod from Ricky Gibson, but like, do they also have to have like confidence in yourself to be able to perform at such a level that represents Oregon Pro Wrestling School, like as it should
sure.
be?
Yeah, I mean, confidence is huge. Yeah, it's kind of the process with that. It's kind of an interesting thing because it's not like if you go to college or high school and you reach like an endpoint, like a definitive endpoint where you get a diploma and you're all done and you get to move on. It's not really like that. Um, at some point, Ricky kind of makes the decision that, yeah, you know what, I think you're ready to start working some shows, and you go and start doing that, and you kind of like phase out, I guess. And a lot of again, like I said, I wish that I had the time um, to go train more than I do. I really don't get to, basically ever. I've been at the school a few times and gotten in the ring and worked on some moves here and there, but as far as just like consistent training with the conditioning and all the stuff that goes on at a normal class, I haven't gotten a chance to do that very much for a while now. But a lot of the guys and gals who live up in Portland still do it. Amira and the Flamin' Aces and people like that, because the school's closer. And some of those people don't have. I'm a little bit older. I'm 36 now. I've got kids at home. I've got stuff, bills to pay, stuff I got to do. Not that they don't have bills to pay, but you know what I mean. When you're younger and you don't have some of those responsibilities, you got more time on your hands to go do those things. And so a lot of them still go and train. But yeah, as far as the process goes, as starting on shows, it's kind of like, well, you're ready, and then you start working shows. And I think even after we debuted, we continued to train for a while, and kind of fine tune things. And because you're always, you could be wrestling for 10 years, 20 years, you're always learning new things, and it's helpful to practice. Um, but yeah, back to your question, as far as like the confidence factor, yeah, it's if you don't have confidence in yourself, you're not going to perform very well. You're not going to go very far in this business or in anything you do. You got to be confident in yourself. And I think you'll reach a point where Ricky kind of feels like, okay, I think I have confidence in this person, um, and he tries to instill that in you and make you feel confident in yourself. Um, but yeah, that's confidence is everything, and everybody struggles with it. There's still times where you know, as confident as I am in our act, um, there are times on big show I get really nervous before I go out through the curtain. And it's kind of like an athlete where sometimes people will say you're only as good as your most recent performance. And I kind of feel that way in wrestling. Like, okay, I've done some cool things. I've had some performances that I'm really proud of. But like if I go out there, if my last match was bad and I don't feel good about it, you know, that can shake your confidence. There's no doubt about it. And you kind of are anxious to have another chance to get that bad taste out of your mouth. But no, it's yeah, confidence is everything, and Ricky does a really good job of kind of instilling that confidence in you and making you feel good about yourself. And he's an excellent trainer. All the people who help out at Oregon Pro Wrestling School are wonderful. And I promise that if Ricky signs off on you being able to work shows, then you're ready. It doesn't mean you got it all figured out, but he would not. He's a very responsible trainer, and he would not let anybody go work a show if he felt like they were not ready. Because it's not safe for them. It's not safe for the people they work with, and it'd be irresponsible for the school to let people start working shows if they're not ready. And there are a lot of schools out there, I think, where that kind of thing does happen. And then when it happens, that's when people make mistakes, people get hurt. And that's the most important thing. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get hurt. But then also, the quality of the product for these different companies is not where it should be, because people get in the ring, they don't know what they're doing. And it kind of gives all of independent wrestling a bad name when you see those shows. So no, he's doing a wonderful job, and I think you see it with the quality of the wrestling in the Pacific Northwest. It's much better than it used to be.
Yeah. So I know when I was interviewing Abigail Warren, and I had asked her about, pro wrestlers that were maybe poorly trained and maybe pushed maybe a little bit before they were actually, and she had said that, like you see that a little bit. Like, would you ever kind of like deny a match if you were ever presented with somebody that maybe you felt wasn't ready?
I mean, it's possible. I haven't ever worked with somebody where I felt like they were so poorly trained that it was unsafe. I have
Yeah.
been in the ring with some people that were obviously very green and just got lost immediately. And some of that is on, like I'm thinking of one match in particular. I'm not going to name names, but I wrestled, Sledge and I wrestled a tag team. I didn't know much about them. They were from a different area. And I wish that I had done a little more research, because my assumption was that because they were brought in from somewhere else, I sort of assumed that they at least had enough experience that, like why would the promotion bring those people in unless they felt like they were going to be an asset, you know what I mean? And if they felt that way, my assumption would be that they'd been doing this for a while. But anyway, they came in and it was very clear that they were very green. Either that or they were just bad. I don't know. Maybe they had been wrestling a long time. That happens sometimes too, where somebody's been wrestling for 10 years and they don't have it, and they probably shouldn't have been allowed to be on shows to begin with. But no, I mean, I haven't been in that position myself, but is it possible? Sure. That one match that I'm thinking of, it was a situation where the team they were a tag team, they'd worked together for a bit, and they had certain spots that they wanted to do, and that was cool. At the time, Sledge and I were working as heels for this company, and they said, okay, well, we'll do this thing and this thing, and okay, cool. And we get out there and they forget all of their own stuff. Like, it's one thing if you're working with people and they have a bunch of stuff that they want you to do, and you're like, I'm trying to remember all this stuff. But if it's your own stuff, like, it's pretty bad if you're like, here's what I'm going to do, and then you go out there and then you forget what you were going to do. So but it was a learning experience for me, because I need to get a lot better, but I pride myself on being a leader and a communicator in the ring, and I feel like I've grown a lot in that area. But I've learned through experience that it's very helpful to know what everybody's doing, and it's tricky sometimes in a tag team match because you got so much going on. You got four people instead of two, and I try to know what everybody's doing throughout the match. Like if we're putting a match together, even if I'm not involved, if I'm on the apron and I know that, okay, I'm not even supposed to get into the match until later, whatever. I want to know what's going on because if I see that people are getting lost or something weird's going on, I want to be able to communicate to them to help them out. And then, anything can happen in a wrestling match. So even if you go in with a plan, maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And if that happens, I want to be as prepared as possible to fix the problem. And it's hard to do that if you don't know what's going on. And so I get a little bit irritated sometimes if we're planning a match, calling a match in the back, and somebody's like, well, this doesn't involve me, so I'm just not going to pay attention. Well, I think the best way to be is to think I want to be a leader out there and I should know everything that's going on and know where we're headed and know what the outline is, and if stuff goes wrong I can fix it. I can communicate to people, all that kind of stuff. So working with those guys, it was a learning experience. I know that when I work with people who are newer or maybe they're I can tell that maybe just the skill level's not really there. You learn to simplify things. You don't want to ask people to do too much. You know what I mean? Like if you
Yeah.
go out there with somebody in WWE who's a stud and they can do anything, um, you'd feel comfortable having them do all kinds of crazy stuff. But if you're in the ring with somebody who's just fresh out of wrestling school and they only know the very basics, you don't want to ask them to do a bunch of complicated stuff. And if they're trying to do that, you want to try to rein them in a little bit and be like, it might be a little soon to be doing that stuff. Um, but luckily, I have not had an experience where I thought, man, this person might hurt me. This person really doesn't know what they're doing. There have probably been times where I felt like somebody was um, getting a little too big for their britches and thought that they were capable of executing a move that they were not capable of, and I would go, no, I'm not taking that. I'm not doing that. So you gotta be smart about it. And that has happened where somebody says, "Oh, how about I do this thing to you?" I'm thinking, not a chance, pal. Um, because again, we're going out there. We're not getting paid a ton of money. It'd be one thing if you were under contract with WWE and somebody came to you and said, "Okay, you got to take this flipping pile driver off this ladder to the out," so whatever, some crazy thing. If you're getting paid great money and you're undercut, okay, I get it. But like for $50 a night, uh, sometimes in front of 30 people, we're fortunate. We have really good crowds, and promotions pay us well around. I mean, as much as they can. They take care of us. But there have been times in my career where I've wrestled in front of very small rooms for not very much money, and I'm gonna still give it my all and try to entertain those 20 people or whatever. But is it really worth it to risk your long-term health? For a crowd of 20 people. These are things you have to consider. You just have to be smart about it. So, yeah, I've nobody where I was like, oh man, that person's dangerous and I should not even get in the ring with them. But yes, I've had moments where I thought, nah, I don't really feel like taking that move from you. You might drop me on my head. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I know when I was talking to Caden Cassidy, we were kind of talking about the Wrestler movie. And there's this one scene where they're sitting backstage and everybody's kind of going through what they want to do for that match. And somebody's like, oh, well, you should really work the neck. And then somebody's like, well, we're like really working the leg. And they're like, oh, okay, like you're working the leg. Like, I don't want to take away from what you want to do in the ring. Have you ever kind of had those conversations back and forth backstage where you're like, if you want to do something, I don't want to take away from what you're actually wanting to do?
Yes, honestly, I think that kind of stuff those conversations should happen more often, probably. Um, there are shows, usually what it is, we don't typically get into a ton of detail with what each match is doing, but we try not to duplicate finishes. So, if this match is going to have a, you know, certain whatever, pile driver is the finish of the match. Okay, well, let's not have this other match do a pile driver at the end. That kind of thing. Or if there's a huge spot, maybe somebody's going to do a big dive, or something very specific. We'll, if we have a meeting before the show, that might get brought up, and the booker will say, "Hey, make sure we don't. This match is doing this thing. Make sure nobody else does it." So occasionally, there have been times where like the story of one of the matches on the card that's important, they're working the leg. And if that's the case, then yeah, the booker might say, "Hey, this match they're working the leg, so I don't really want anybody else on the show to be working the leg and making that the story of their match." So yeah, it happens sometimes. The reason I say that I wish we had more of those conversations is because I've been on a lot of shows where we don't really communicate with the other wrestlers and what they're doing in their match. Some of it is just it's not really possible because some of the locker rooms that we are in, it's not just like one room where everybody's able to sort of mingle and chat. We're kind of separated, like it's different rooms or whatever, and so there's just not a lot of opportunities for excuse me, wrestlers to get together and discuss those things. Some of it too is some of the wrestlers just don't really care there, which at times is unfortunate, where they're just like, well, I'm gonna go out there and do my thing, and if this other match is doing the same thing, who cares? uh it can be frustrating because especially if the Hammer Brothers, we have kind of a formula, and we're trying to be better about switching that up. And we have certain moves that the crowd likes, and we always try to include those. But the trick is to do it in different ways to kind of keep it fresh and not just do the same exact formula every time. But we have certain signature moves and things, and it's frustrating sometimes when we have moves like that. We're on a show and the crowd knows those moves and they love seeing them, and then the match right before ours they do something similar, and it's not as theatrical as ours. Usually our signature moves have a lot of theatrics, and that's what makes them popular. But it'd be like the wheelbarrow is something we've been doing a long time, and ours is very theatrical, and it'd be like the match right before us, guys are hitting these wheelbarrow moves throughout the match, and it's like that's kind of our thing. And honestly, like when that happens, I'm thinking to myself, well, you guys are just kind of like ruining your own match, because when you do that kind of, like, it's not going to be as good as the way we do it because ours is so much bigger and over the top. So like it's really just hurting yourself. But yeah, I mean, I think we're starting to see now with some of the local companies where I think the promoters, the bookers are starting to notice that we're doing a lot of the same stuff in each match. And so I've noticed that they're starting to have some of the more veteran wrestlers kind of agent matches, which is a pretty standard practice, I think, at the higher levels, like WWE. If you watch any of their stuff about how things operate, how people operate backstage, they have an agent for each match, which is like a producer type person, probably an ex wrestler, who kind of gets with the wrestlers in the match and puts the match together and says, okay, here's what we want. And they kind of help mediate and negotiate and put the match together that way. At the indie level, for the most part, my experience is the booker says, hey, uh, here's the finish, here's who's going to win, and you guys come up with the rest, basically. Um, and that's cool. Don't get me wrong, I really appreciate the freedom, and we still have that freedom to kind of fill in the gaps. But Um, I think at the local companies, because we are duplicating so many spots and things, they're starting to kind of have people get involved a little more and make sure that we're not having 10 matches where the same spot happens in every single one, because it gets boring for the crowd, and it makes it more obvious that it's a work. Like, why is it that they just did that same thing over and over and over, so um yeah, it's something that we're working on.
All right. Like, do you kind of prefer to actually be able to call the match throughout the match instead of every aspect being told to you on what to do?
Yeah, I mean, I love having creative freedom.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's the part that's fun for me. I think I enjoy the creative part even more than just performing. Like, I think that I would really enjoy being a booker. Being able to write the storylines and do that kind of stuff. That part's really exciting for me. And so yeah, as far as calling the match, the process that I prefer, yeah, I like to have a little bit of that freedom. I like to at least have an outline before we go out there too. I don't think I've ever had a single match where everything went exactly according to plan. Most of the time, in my experience, we typically don't have a chance to walk through everything. We'll talk about it in the back, but sometimes you're trying things where you maybe haven't really done it that way before. And especially with tag team wrestling, it's a lot more difficult than singles, just from the standpoint of positioning, um, because you have to tag in and out and you got another person in each corner. You have to be aware of like where you're at in the ring. I can't get too close to this guy because like either he'll hit me, or why wouldn't my partner just tag me? There's just a lot to think about that you don't really consider until you get into it and you start putting this stuff together. Um,
Yeah.
so I've never really had a match go absolutely perfect the way that we called it in the back. But I think wrestling has evolved to where it's just not as simple as it used to be. Like, I know that, and maybe it may still happen. It's pretty rare in my experience where two guys just go out there and call everything in the ring. Um, Once upon a time, I think that was kind of the standard. But you watch matches from back in the day, like in the '80s, and um, a lot of those older wrestlers kind of brag about how, oh, we just call it out in the ring, and these young guys, these new guys, they're not as good as we were. They have to plan everything out in the back. But the thing is, it's become so the moves are much more difficult. The matches are much more complex, and maybe you don't like that. That's fine, but that's just the reality. Is that you can't get away with just doing headlock takeovers and elbow drops, and there's just so much more going on now. And so because of that, it's really difficult to go out there and have the type of match that I think the audience has grown to expect, without calling it a little bit in the back, because you can't have some elaborate spot where you're ducking this and hitting the ropes and doing this and but how you gonna do all that on the fly? You're gonna Even if you're talking to the guy the whole time, the crowd's loud. How are you gonna hear it? How are you gonna um it's helpful if you've worked with the person a lot. Like, that's where kind of chemistry comes in. Like, if you're used to working with people and you kind of know how each other's moves and that kind of thing, what you like to do, that makes it easier, certainly. But yeah, my process, I like to have the freedom to kind of come up with our own stuff, at least have an outline, and then when we get out there, you can make the adjustments because stuff goes wrong. Somebody's not in the right spot, or they forget where they're supposed to be, or another big one is, each match only has a certain amount of time. You can't just go on forever and ever, so you're supposed to hit your time mark, And sometimes you go long. Sometimes this thing took way longer than you anticipated. Now you got to cut this or whatever. And that's where the working on the fly kind of comes into play nowadays, I think. Um, and it's just on that note, it's kind of funny because when I first got into the biz, um, I remember, and this kind of happened even when I was at Oregon Pro Wrestling School, but you have veteran wrestlers who walk past you when you're calling a match with somebody and they go, greenhorns, or they got to call it ahead of time. I just call it in the ring. And the funny thing is, I would say um, the vast majority of the time, I'd watch that wrestler go out and call it in the ring, and it was just an awful match. So like, okay, you can call it in the ring, but that doesn't mean it's going to be any good. You know what I mean? Like, um, so that always cracked me up, and it's kind of it's a sort of tradition, I think, in wrestling where the veteran wrestlers, a lot of them, some of them are awesome, but some of them not so nice.
Yeah.
And there's reasons for that, which we could get into, but they kind of, maybe they feel threatened by the young guys or whatever, and they say things like that, and then you see them actually go out and work, and you're like, well, that's why I don't call it in the ring, because I don't want it to look like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I hope that answered the question. Yeah, I like to have the freedom to call the stuff, but I also recognize that a lot of wrestlers maybe don't have it together as far as planning out a match and knowing what's good and what isn't, and so that's where I think the agenting comes into play, and I do think sometimes that's necessary. So
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start to talk about maybe the future wrestlers. Like, what would be one piece of advice that you would give them based off of your knowledge of how to coordinate a match? What would be your biggest piece of advice?
yeah. I mean, the very first thing is learn the basics. You got to have good fundamentals. You have to have a good foundation before you can move on and start doing more complex stuff. Um, and Oregon Pro Wrestling School does an excellent job of teaching the basics and making sure everybody's fundamentally sound. So that's step one. Um, Maybe where I differ from other people is I think that new wrestlers should be creative and start coming up with ideas right away. You may not get to use them right away, but be creative, be unique, come up with ideas for a gimmick, come up with catch for it, whatever. You gotta, once you get onto shows, you have to figure out a way to separate yourself from others. You have to figure out a way to make yourself memorable. If you go out there and you look the exact same as everybody else and you do all the same moves, and that's boring, nobody's going to remember you.
Yeah.
um, so that's my biggest thing. I think that especially when new wrestlers are starting out, I don't think there's enough emphasis on promos, on character development. And don't get me wrong, it's very important to know the basics. Like, the most important thing is to not hurt people in the ring. You want to, put on a great show, do all of that, but you know, we're trusting each other to take care of each other's bodies, and so that's number one. So obviously that's the most important thing. But as far as actually like becoming a draw and moving on up uh, the chain, you gotta come up with something unique. You can't just be generic guy. You're never going to make it that way. So that's one thing. If I were to teach a seminar or go to the school and give some words of wisdom to the new students, that would be probably my biggest thing, is figure out something to make the crowd go, man, that guy's different from everybody else that I've seen. I like what's going on there. Um, I mean, I'll give you a few other things. Like, I'm a yapper, as you know, Cody, but I could go on for days about stuff that I would tell new wrestlers. But another thing is, you're going to get advice from so many different people. And one funny thing about wrestling, it's probably this way in sports and any line of work, basically. Um, Everybody's got an opinion on stuff. You're going to get a lot of conflicting opinions. You're going to have this person tell you, well, this is how you do it, and then this other person tell you, no, it's actually, you should do it this way. So you have to kind of take everything with a grain of salt, pick and choose what works for you, I think that's super important. So, because I've gotten lots of advice from different people, and some of it's from people who have done a lot in the business, and I respect them. I respect them for what they've done, and they've told me, oh, I think you should do this thing. And I just thought, I don't like that. No, I think you're wrong about that, and that's okay. And that's Sledge and I have a really good, which I know we'll get into this more. Our relationship with the Midnight Heat, Ricky Gibson and Eddie Pearl, who are kind of our on-screen arch nemeses. But we get along really well with them behind the scenes, and I have so much respect for both of them. They're both excellent workers, and they're really probably the biggest reason that the Hammer Brothers have gotten to do the things that we've gotten to do. They've vouched for it. We've had a lot of great matches and feuds with them. And one of the things that I really respect about Ricky and Eddie is that sometimes we just don't agree on something, and they don't they don't belittle you for agreeing with them. You can disagree on stuff, and it's just a matter of opinion or preference. It doesn't mean that one person is wrong. So I would just keep that in mind. You're going to have a lot of people telling you what's good and what isn't, and you got to figure out what works for you. That's the most important thing. And also remember in wrestling, oftentimes people have ulterior motives. They are telling you a certain thing, but they're not being genuine, and maybe they want you to screw up. There's a lot of that because wrestling is competitive. Yeah, but everybody's trying to get on the show, get a good spot on them, because the more are to that company, the more money you're going to get paid. Probably, like, that's what's real. The more money you're going to make off merchandise if you're, an act that has connected with the crowd and that gets promoted on the post and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, those would be three of the big things. But yeah, I would say the one is be creative, be unique, work on your promos, be a character, stand out.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to two questions that I have for you. And something that I've kind of noticed is, like, whenever you look at, you and Sledge, you look at Drexel, you look at Jaden, you look at Funny Bone, all of these people have a legitimate character. And then when you talk to other wrestlers, it's almost like they just want to be themselves. But it's like that doesn't connect with the audience as much as actually having a character. Like, you kind of feel that same way? Oh, you still there?
Yeah, and
There you go.
okay. Yes, and I'll speak pretty freely on this. I can't stand wrestling where it's just this guy with a normal name versus this guy with a normal name, no character, nothing that makes them interesting. That just has never appealed to me. I fell in love with wrestling during a time where the characters were larger than life and colorful, and they were like superheroes on the screen. Like, that's what I like, and I get that some people aren't into that, but I just think that generally speaking, you're going to have a much easier time connecting with the crowd if you have you know some kind of character that is interesting to them. I think especially now with the rise of MMA, where you can go see people beat each other up for real. Those are real people, and they've got regular names. And so if that's the kind of thing you're into, why would you not just go watch the real thing? I mean, I always thought that the appeal of professional wrestling was, the showmanship and the theatricality of it. That's just my opinion, but I do think that, even around most of the acts gotten really over with the crowd, acts that, have a character, have some kind of gimmick, have something that it makes that person stand out. Um, and again, that's why that would be probably my biggest piece of advice to new wrestlers is, having a character is it's, I think. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who have managed to get over without doing that stuff. I think it's typically a lot more difficult because if you don't have charisma, you don't have a good character, you have to figure out some other way to get over, right? So either you have to do a lot of high risk moves that make the crowd go wow, um, and that's fine. But again, like how long are you going to be able to run that all the time? You're going to get hurt, and injuries happen no matter what you do. I mean, even the way that we wrestle, there's always potential for injury, but I think you limit the risk when you don't do a bunch of danger moves all the time. But either you got to do something like that, or maybe you're really text cool. But again, my personal um, view of it, I've always just somebody with no personality, no charisma, and they just they do a lot of mat wrestling. I think that's boring. That's just my opinion, but I think the reason pro wrestling evolved the way it did was that was boring, and as when wrestling became a work and it blew up, when WWF kind of took over, even in the territory days when it started to become popular and it was a work. The reason that it transformed that way is that two guys wrestling each other field just wasn't that entertaining to most people. Um, so but there have been wrestlers who have gotten over by just being like mat technicians and not having any kind of character personality. But I think it's a lot more difficult to get over that way. Um, So yeah, I mean, I think character is super important. That's just the type of thing that I prefer. And the big topics going on right now is how independent wrestling seems to be struggling a little bit. Like um, I think that in a lot of ways, uh,
Just a little bit. It just lagged a little bit. Oh no. You still there? Oh no. Oh no. Hold on, you guys. We'll be right back. Come on, Jack. Sorry about this, you guys. We'll be right back. There we go.
all right, am I back?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry,
No, you're
my
fine.
internet's been acting up. I was a little
No,
nervous.
it's all good, man. No problem.
But yeah, to wrap that up, yes, I think character is important. I think I was mentioning that I've seen people talking on the internet about how, "Oh, is this the end of the wrestling, kind of this indie wrestling, because Prestige is a business. Deadlock went out of business. There are probably bigger indies around the country that are struggling or have closed up shop. And just my opinion, and this might rub some people the wrong way, but I think indie wrestling in a lot of ways, just in general, has been kind of this. It was a response to WWE, and I think a lot of people maybe didn't like the entertainment, part of WWE, the characters and the soap opera. And I think a lot of indie companies kind of presented themselves as being more like gritty, just all about the wrestling. A lot of those in the last, couple decades, WWE and had really good careers, and a lot of those guys are extremely talented. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think that what you're seeing right now with some of these companies shutting down or struggling, I think that type of wrestling, just I'm a wrestler and do moves. I think that appeals to a very small group of people. I think very hard appreciate that. But this is a business. We're trying to make money. And I think if you want to grow your business and try to bring in new fans, that's just not going to resonate with a lot of, quote unquote, normal people. And I think why WWE became what it became, and they created more drama with the storylines and the characters and all that stuff, because stuff that I think more people can connect to. In my opinion, I think indie wrestling would benefit from maybe taking a page out of the book and focusing more on character and storylines and emotional investment. I think that's the stuff that makes people come back, makes people buy tickets. When it's just two guys wrestling for the sake of wrestling, and they're just doing moves and you don't really. I just think that gets my best memories of watching wrestling when I was a kid. I was a big fan of The Rock when I was a kid, and talk all about work rate and 5-star matches and all this kind of. When I was a kid, I'll tell you what my dream match was. It was The Rock getting in there 1, 2, 3. That was my dream match. I didn't care if he had a 20-minute banger or whatever. I wanted my hero to defeat the villain. End of story. And when The Rock lost, I cried, baby. And when he won, I was just so pumped up. That's the feeling that if you want them to keep coming back. But this whole, let's just go out there and do bangers, and I just don't think it's sustainable. And I think that's why some of these companies are currently struggling. Sledge and I try to bring to wrestling, and I think if you listen to fans on the internet, it's a very vocal minority of people who like that stuff. But if you want to connect to a bigger audience, you got to give them drama. You got to give them characters and stories. And if you don't do that, I just don't think that you're going to last long in this business. So.
Yeah. Well, that is really awesome. Well, do you mind if we take a 1-minute break just so that I can go use the bathroom really fast?
Let's do it. Maybe awesome. I can get my internet to kind of start working better.
Okay, perfect. All right, you guys, we'll be right back for more of Interesting Podcast. All right. What's up, man? Sorry about that.
We're good.
Awesome. So one thing I wanted to ask you was like, whenever you're actually going to a new company, do you kind of like show them like your resume as far as all of the companies that you've worked for? And like, do you have references that you actually give them so that they can know what you're doing?
Um, we, we haven't really. I think some wrestlers do. Um, kind of give them a resume more or less. Um, worked for. Um, Generally, it's just like a wrestler who we know who works for that company recommends us, and
Okay.
it's kind of they can find your matches, they can promos online and that kind of thing, and um, so um, I do think that if Sledge and I want to try to sort of level up and um, start traveling outside of the Pacific Northwest and wrestling for some bigger companies around the country, we're going to need probably a little bit later. I think both of us kind of, our wish is that our work will speak for itself and that people will see us and go, oh man, we really like what these guys are doing. Let's
Damn it. Oop. And he's back. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I can't hear you. Give us just 1 second, you guys. Can you hear me? Oh, no. Yeah, give us just 1 second, you guys. We'll get it back together. All right, just give us 1 second, you guys. We'll get it back together. Come on. Bam. All right, sweet.
Okay, can you hear me, Cody?
I can.
Yep. Okay, hold on, because I can't hear you. One sec.
No, it's fine.
Okay, you try talking.
All right.
Mm,
All good. We'll get back to it.
1 second, because I still can't hear you.
No problem.
Okay, try now.
How is it?
There we go.
Sweet.
Is there kind of an echo?
No, no,
Okay.
it sounds good.
Okay, I had to switch computers because that computer, this is my laptop now, so we'll see if I have better luck with this one.
Okay. All right, man. Well, let's just start off with the next question. So, like, what was your favorite match of 2025?
Ooh, 2025. Let me think. I'll just kind of, the first one that probably pops into my head is our POW match with the Flamin' Aces. That was a lot of fun. I think that was it was late last year, November or December. But that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. We love working with the Flamin' Aces. They are so much fun to work with, and it's really kind of a bummer that both of us are most of the time babyface tag teams because we don't get to work each other a lot. But I feel like we have really good chemistry with them, and we are working, kind of a little program at PAL with them right now. It was kind of a bummer. It was a little bit the angle that we had planned out was kind of derailed by Spencer suffering an injury. He broke his wrist in a different match at a different show. But we're really excited about this tag team ladder match coming up at PAL. But that was a lot of fun. It's hard because all of the matches kind of, it's hard to keep track of what matches were what year, you know what I mean? But let me think. PAL. I mean, I had fun in we did a cage match at PAL with with Amira and Matt Brannigan against the Dynasty. That was fun. It was kind of it was like a war game style where we kind of came out, we weren't all out there at once. So we weren't out there for a long time, but that was fun. We always like working with Matt. We got to work with Matt another time at PAL. That was a lot of fun. I hope that we can do that in the future with him because I think we both have, fun gimmicks. He's very much kind of a comedy guy, and we like to be funny too and have fun on the mic and all that kind of stuff. So, and we really click with him backstage. I really like Matt a lot. Really good dude, and great mind for wrestling. And so working with him was cool. We had some great matches the last couple years with the Midnight Heat at Prestige and up at Oblivion Wrestling. Good. We've got great chemistry with them, and so those are probably my favorite matches. And I'm really looking forward to this year. I'm hoping that this is the year that we really start to kind of step up our game and have some more big matches.
Yeah, that is so cool. So, like, what was your kind of mindset heading into the final Prestige Pro Wrestling show?
Well, it was by far the biggest show of our careers, so I was a little more nervous for that than normal. I knew it was going to be a big crowd, but I was excited because I knew they'd be hot for us. We had probably more so than anything else on the show, we had really kind of established a story with the Midnight Heat. Um, so I knew the crowd would be into it, no matter what, even if I wasn't completely satisfied with how the match went. I felt like we had a good connection with the Roseland crowd, and so I was nervous for that. I was excited about the construction site match. We've done a couple of those in the past, and we had fun both times. We wanted this one to be even bigger than those, so
you know, it was kind of out of my own pocket, but I went and I got a lot of different gimmicks for that. Got a panel of drywall and a bunch of plywood. A lot of the stuff I had already because we'd used it in the past. But the thing that a lot of people I think were talking about after the match was the concrete rubble that basically exploded into dust. That was a lot of fun. We had done that once before at DOA, the first construction site match that we did. We called it was a destruction zone match, the first one that we did. But that was, you know, that was such a cool visual with the dust. I think it was, I think one of the most memorable parts of the show. So I was really happy with that. So, yeah, I mean, leading into the show, I was excited. I was nervous. I was looking forward to getting through it because you know, as much fun as that was, you know, it was, I just wanted it to go well and be done with it. And, you know, we had certain plans for the match and I wanted it all to go smoothly. And I was hoping that by the end of it, I was going to be happy with it. So, I'm glad that it's over with. It was an awesome, special moment for us. But yeah, it was, I was a little more nerves than I typically have, just because of the size of the crowd, and I knew a lot of eyeballs were going to be on it. You know, a lot of people were going to be watching the stream because it was the last Prestige show. So, but it was a lot of fun.
That is really cool. Well, I mean, I want to dive a little bit more into the Prestige show, especially during the construction site match. And I was just curious as to like how was it when you kind of know that, you know, we have Defy, Relentless, DOA, POW Pro Wrestling, that like when Prestige finally ended, like did you feel like it would be a huge impact on the Pacific Northwest scene? Or do you think it maybe will kind of benefit to kind of get more eyes on these other shows?
I think it's not a good thing. It's a negative. Prestige, you know, they got a lot of attention. So it's just a company that, you know, I know for us, that was probably the most exposure that we were getting because they had the most fans, you know, in the building and probably the most attention online also. So it's a bummer for the wrestlers to lose a company like that. Yeah, we are in a pretty good position having some of these other companies in the area. But, you know, Prestige was that was a goal of ours. I know, you know, when we first started out, we saw some of the you know, better workers were working those shows, and they fly in a lot of people, and it just seemed like, you know, the goal was to get there. That was going to be kind of the natural progression, was to move up to Prestige. That was one of our goals starting out, and you know, I'm happy that we did that. But no, it's a bummer. I will say that, you know, and this is kind of true of some other companies also, but working at Prestige, and I'm very thankful, you know, to William Quintana, everybody, you know, with Prestige Wrestling for giving us that opportunity, because it was probably the most special moment of my career, you know, getting to have that match. It's kind of our signature gimmick match, to wrestle our trainers who we, you know, love and have so much chemistry with, to have that moment with my son after the match. Like, the whole thing was just really special night. So, you know, I really appreciate Prestige giving us that opportunity. That being said, I also, we're gonna have more of this in the future, I'm sure, but there's a part of me that felt like we, you know, because we went against the grain so much, like what Prestige is, or at least what people's perception of Prestige is sort of like, you know, this very much an indie company where it's like, you know, a lot of guys who are real good in the ring and maybe not as much in the way of, you know, storylines and over the top characters. It's a little more of that, you know, stereotypical modern indie gritty, high work rate sort of a thing, and we're not that. So, we're very much entertainers, and we, not that we don't try to do our best, between the ropes, but we're just very different, a very different act, and I think that at times we felt like I don't want to say that we were unwelcome. Everybody was awesome, and again, we're very grateful for having that opportunity. But it just like we were so different from everything else on the show for the most part, that it just felt kind of weird being there sometimes. At POW, I think POW is a little more colorful, and I think Mr. Ooh La La is a big fan of gimmicks and storylines and characters, and so we feel very at home there. And the same, I think, is true of DOA as well. I know Drexel, he and everybody at DOA, they love the stories, and I think they recognize that that's important. And not that Prestige didn't do storylines, they did, but just generally speaking, it was more like Prestige was a little more grounded, maybe, more of that kind of stereotypical indie style. So, it's still a shame because Prestige is one of those companies that a lot of people talk about, and it was potentially going to be kind of a I don't want to say stepping stone, but sort of a pipeline to other opportunities. You know what I mean? I know that they had kind of a working relationship with some companies down in California. Sledge and I have not gotten to go down there at all. So that would probably be the next step. So it was just a way for us to kind of springboard into other things also. And now that it's gone, we're going to have to figure out some other way to do that. So like you mentioned, there's Defy, there's Relentless, or some other companies. We haven't gotten to work for those companies a ton. We've worked for each of them, once or twice. Nothing big, but so we're gonna have to figure out something else. Prestige was kind of our biggest opportunity to date. So yeah, it's a major bummer. I think everybody in the area is really disappointed that they closed up shop, but they had a hell of a run, and I think everybody's very thankful that Prestige, gave so many wrestlers a platform to do what they do, and we're one of those wrestlers. They gave us the biggest platform we've ever had. So major bummer, but a lot of good memories.
That is really awesome. Well, before we actually continue with the Prestige show, I want to ask you just something I find really interesting is that, like, you and Sledge have been nominated for Tag Team of the Year or some of the best tag team here in the Pacific Northwest, like multiple years now. And AEW is a company that really likes to emphasize on tag team wrestling. Like, does it kind of give you a little bit of confidence to know that Tony Khan could possibly have you guys in his back pocket?
I mean, that would be awesome. Everybody wants to get signed, it's a dream come true for any wrestler to be able to do this for a living and not have to work a day job,
Yeah.
It's, I think, for any small time independent wrestler, it feels like a long shot to have an opportunity like that. But Sledge and I are very confident in what we do. We're never gonna claim to be the best technical wrestlers or anything like that, but we feel like we're one of the best tag teams out there when it comes to entertainment value. We are very confident in our promo skills, just how we've developed every aspect of our characters, and there's so much to play with. And I think we would be an asset to any company, including AEW. And, so a lot of people have compared us to the Outrunners. I love the Outrunners. I think they're the best tag team in the world. I think, and that's, they are very much our vibe, and I love what they do. I think they're incredible. And it's, flattering that some people have compared us to them. The gimmicks are different, but the vibe's kind of the same, where we're very over the top and kind of a throwback to a different era, colorful, all that kind of stuff. So do I think we could do something like that? Yeah, absolutely, I do. It's just a matter of getting that opportunity. And it's tough. There's so much competition out there. And unfortunately, like, in a lot of fields, oftentimes it's not necessarily about your talent. It's about knowing the right people, having the right connections. Maybe the right opportunity pops up where so-and-so gets hurt or whatever it is, unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it works. So again, like back to what I said earlier, I think that Sledge and I just need to be better also about reaching out, to different companies, not necessarily AEW, but any company, and saying, hey, we'd like to work here. Check out our stuff. Send them some of the stuff. We gotta do a better job and take it upon ourselves to pursue those things. But no, it's very flattering. And I had shared an article because I was kind of excited about it, even though it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But somebody on WrestleTalk.com, which is a fairly big platform, did this list of like tag teams that they would like to see get signed by AEW. And most of the teams on the list, I think, were like pretty big name guys who maybe used to be in WWE, or they're, big names on the indies. And then there was us. So it was kind of, I thought that was pretty cool. I think a lot of times the fans on the internet maybe aren't the biggest fans of our act because we are so anti-indie in some ways, you know what I mean? Like, we're not the guys who are in there just doing fancy technical high-flying moves. We're a throwback team. So it was cool to see somebody, include us in that and hype us up that way. But yeah, I mean, we would love to go to AEW. Tony Khan, give us a call. We'd love to be there.
Oh, that is so awesome. So like, how did it feel after the match at Prestige, where you guys were the final tag team champions of that company? Did you guys get to keep the belts?
No, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of, which, I get, I think everybody was holding out hope that maybe Prestige would come back at some point, and not that it's impossible, but I would say it's kind of unlikely. But no, we didn't get to keep the belts, but you know what? I wasn't worried about that. We got to have our moment, and that was super special. And the match, the whole event was awesome. I'm satisfied with it. I have a hard time. I feel so good about it right now because after the match, I felt great. I thought, you know what? The crowd was hot. I felt like we did everything we needed to. The match probably went on a little long. You sort of, it's hard to accurately predict how long it's going to take to go get all the gimmicks, so that kind of adds to the time because we store them under the ring and everything. And, wrestling, it's a live show, and sometimes things don't go the way they're supposed to. We had planned to have a little bit more time for the security to set up everything around the ring so that we'd have easier access to it. And it's probably it's a communication breakdown, but they hit our music, and now we got to go out, and the security team's scrambling to get everything together. So once the match starts, we're trying to find everything, and so that kind of played a part in the match maybe going on a little bit longer than we had hoped. But I thought the crowd enjoyed it. They were hot for everything. So yeah, I didn't watch the match back because I feel so good about it right now that I don't want to watch it back and then kind of nitpick it and pick it apart and go, oh, it wasn't as good as I thought it was. I did watch like a highlight reel that I think Sledge put together, and I thought everything looked good there. And so I feel really good about it. I don't think realistically, I don't think it could have gone any better than it did. And to have that moment with my son was really special. That was kind of the thing I was most looking forward to. So no, I'm still on cloud 9 about how things went for that show.
Yeah, that was definitely something I wanted to bring up to you was they introduced him as Cat Camera. So
Yes.
like, how was it kind of like having your son and I think your girlfriend, because I had seen a little clip of her kind of, embracing your son as well. So like how was it kind of having both of them there?
So my girlfriend was there. That was my son's mother, who is not my girlfriend, but
okay.
Yes, It's all
Okay.
good. And no, that was cool. I don't think she had ever been to a show before. So I think it was neat for her to see little Tack Hammer get to do that. No, it was super special. And my son, we call him Tack Hammer, and he's had that name for a while, and he thinks it's super cool. In fact, when he says his full name to people in real life, he adds Tack Hammer at the end, and I think that he was very excited about it. I could tell my son is very outgoing, and he's got a personality. I could tell at the show that it was a little overwhelming for him. He was kind of nervous, and he's going, "Oh, everybody's looking at me," and so I could tell he was a little timid. But he did a great job. He got it, did the boom, the hammer taunt, and just a really special moment. And I think that's something he'll probably remember forever. And we've got the videos and the pictures and stuff. And so we may never get another chance to do that. And I thought that was the best time to do it. He had actually never been to any of our shows before, in part because I don't want him going to school and trying to body slam kids and imitating what he sees his dad and his uncle do. But he'd seen some videos. He knew about the dump truck, and he thinks that's really funny and cool. And so sometimes when we're wrestling in the living room, he'll try to dump truck me and that kind of thing. No, that was such a cool moment. I'm glad we did it. We took a chance. We've done this in the past, and it's sort of backfired in a way where people got mad at us. We got a little heat in the back for not asking for permission to do something, but sometimes in wrestling, you gotta take those calculated risks. And I thought, this is going to be a moment that is so special, and so I don't want to go and ask for permission to do this, and they say no, you can't do it. And then if I do it anyway, I really look like a jerk that I'm going against what the promoter or booker asked me to do. So I just thought, let's just go for it. We win, and I'll just treat it like it was a spur of the moment thing. And but no, I think everybody in the back thought it was really cool, and we didn't get any heat for it. So it was totally worth it. And just a really cool moment. And probably honestly, that match and then having that moment with Tack Hammer after was the coolest thing I've ever done in wrestling. So really, really fun stuff.
That is freaking awesome. Well, I know I have one more question about him, but that'll come a little bit later. What are your thoughts on Silas Mason coming to DOA Pro Wrestling to put his NWA World Heavyweight Championship on the line?
Well, you probably didn't know this, but when I first got into wrestling, Silas was my guy. He was my closest friend in wrestling, and we just really connected. I think we really see things the same way. And so I am, no pun intended, thrilled for him to come to DOA. I'm really excited about it. And I haven't seen him since, gosh, it's been probably about a decade since I've seen him in person. We've talked, messaged each other over the years. And I even years ago designed some gear for him after I had stopped wrestling the first time around. But he was, he had, because he used to wrestle in this area. And then, he's had such a great career so far. I'm so proud of him. And being the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion is super cool. He was somebody, when I first met him, I said, this guy's got it. Like, this guy's going to be in WWE someday. He's a huge guy.
Yeah.
6'5", 6'6", 275 pounds, whatever he is. He's in the best shape of his life right now. He looks phenomenal. He's an amazing promo, one of the best guys on the mic I've ever seen. And I'm glad that that's paying off for him finally. And having him at DOA is going to be really a treat for the fans and for, all the wrestlers. It's going to be pretty exciting to see him. He's going to get a chance to work with some of the guys who helped train him, Drexel, Ricky Gibson, Dr. Cleaver. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think he is just such a great talent and such a great person. And my brother, I've talked about the Thrill Billy a bunch over the years because we connected so well, and I wrestled him back in the day several times. We had some good matches together. This was pre-Jackhammer, but I got to take the thrill ride and all that kind of stuff. So I had a lot of fun stories that I would tell Sledge, and I think Sledge is really looking forward to meeting him for the first time. And Silas has reached out to us a few times since we started doing the Hammer Brothers thing, and talked about how he'd love to have us in NWA, and he'll put in a good word for us. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think he really likes what we do, and he knew about the Jackhammer Hammer Brothers gimmick, way 10 years ago, and I think he's really happy for me and excited that we are getting to do our thing. You know what I mean? So, no, I'm again thrilled to have the Thrill Billy back in the Pacific Northwest.
That's awesome. Well, I have like two questions, and something that like I found just really interesting just thinking about is like to kind of go off of different spectrums. What to you makes a good match?
Well, I mean, the big thing is, did the crowd like it? That's how we kind of gauge it. That's number one. Was the crowd hot? Did they like what we were doing out there? Are the baby faces over with the crowd? Are the heels getting heat? The reaction's everything, but diving into it a little bit more. I mean, one of the, obvious things is, did you execute everything well? Did it look real? Did you hit your spots? Did you, not get lost and make yourself look like a fool? So like the actual like execution of the moves and all of that is important. But like I said, no match is perfect. I've never had a match where I thought, man, I nailed everything exactly the way I wanted. There's always, you're always going to nitpick and find the little things where like, I should have done that a little differently or whatever it is. But you want to execute as well as you can. I think how the crowd responds to it. I always think about, I try to focus on the little things, which I think is something that a lot of wrestlers don't do. And that would be another piece of advice I'd have for newer wrestlers, is to pay attention to all the little details. Because you think they don't maybe matter as much as the big move or whatever, but those things add up and they are important. So, for example, when I watch a match back, one of our matches, one of the things I pay attention to as much as the moves, or maybe even more so than the moves, is how I'm emoting, how I'm playing to the crowd. If I do a move or whatever, and did I turn and do my taunt? Did I talk trash? And was I being my character? Because sometimes it's easy when you're in a match and you're thinking about, okay, well, I got to do this thing next or whatever. You forget to be the character. You know what I mean? So that's super important. That's something that I look for, and I get, upset with myself if I don't do it, well enough. But I think that's something that everybody needs to pay attention to is, you hit that cool move, but did you get up and hit your taunt and get the crowd fired up at the right moment and all that kind of stuff. I also think storytelling, what story did you tell in the match? And it could be as simple as, like we talked about earlier, the heel's working the leg. Okay. And now the guy's got a hurt leg. Okay, how's he going to overcome that to win the match? The story could be as simple as that. But you got to tell a story, and back to my, what I was saying about the kind of wrestling that I like matches that tell stories. If you're just out there and you're just trading moves back and forth and there's no baby face, there's no heel, or even if there's no real story and it's just like, you're just doing moves and there's no pacing to it. To me, that's a bad match. I like matches that take you on this kind of emotional journey. And I think it's a lot like watching a movie. Movies have, it's this ride, and you want it right at the climax, right at the apex of where everybody's at emotionally. That's when you hit the finish. Like that's kind of what you're looking for. So, and again, that goes back to the crowd response. If the finish comes and the crowd's silent, you failed. You know what I mean? It's it's all about that crowd reaction and getting the connection with the audience. But yeah, the storytelling, that's so important. I was thinking about this, in preparation for the interview. I was thinking about how if you were to watch a movie, even if it's very technically impressive, let's say you watch like an action movie, kung fu movie or something, and you have two characters fighting each other. A lot of kung fu movies, the choreography is unbelievable, and it's very technically impressive. But I promise you that you are going to enjoy that movie more if you have some kind of emotional investment in the characters. You like the good guy. You don't like the bad guy. You want the good guy to beat the bad guy. That makes it more special, and I think you'll enjoy it more versus just two guys fighting and you don't really care what happens. Oh, it's cool that they're just doing moves, but like if this guy wins, okay, I don't care. If that guy wins, I don't really care. To me, that just,
Yeah.
that stinks. So I think getting the crowd to feel something, that's a big part of having a good match.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like as soon as you were sitting there explaining that, like, I don't know if you remember back in the Fast and the Furious movie when they had Dom Toretto and The Rock facing each other. Like everybody gravitated toward that because you were either voting for this one or voting for that one.
That's so important because if you don't care, then like, why am I watching? You know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying that being really technically impressive with the moves, it's not that doesn't have any value. Like, don't get me wrong. When I watch like some of the best, technical wrestlers in the world, when I watch them do their thing, like how athletic they are and how smooth they are with stuff, it's impressive. And I'd love to be able to do some of that stuff. But I think without the character stuff, without the charisma and the connection with the crowd where you get that emotional investment, that stuff doesn't mean as much. Like I don't, that's why I will always prefer the characters and the charisma. And, there's only so much you can do also when it comes to wrestling, as far as like physically, we're going to hit a ceiling at some point. You know what I mean? Like human beings are only capable of so much. When you're watching a movie, they got special effects. They can basically, it's limit. The sky's the limit. But a live show where it's actual people having to do things, like we just keep escalating, and eventually, like, where else do we go? You know what I mean? And you can only do so much, and then eventually, they did this really crazy move, but I've seen it now 100 times. Like, it's going to stop hitting the same way if I don't care about that person. So, good match to me. Get the crowd involved, get the crowd invested in it, tell a good story, have good pacing, do things at the right time. It's not always about the move itself, but did you do it where you should have? So much. The thing that's so fascinating to me about wrestling is like match structure and psychology. It's kind of like writing a script for a movie or a TV show where you want to put things in a certain order, or put something in a certain place that's going to make the crowd feel this way right at the right moment, or you know what I mean? So if you do all those things well, I think it's a good match.
That is freaking awesome. Well, I know coming up next month, I believe, for POW Pro Wrestling, you have a ladder match against the Flamin' Aces. What can we expect from you guys when it comes to a ladder match?
I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm hopeful that it'll be a great match and the crowd will enjoy it. But, as I mentioned earlier, we have great chemistry with the Flamin' Aces. I love working those guys. I think we're going to have a banger, So it should be fun. I'm hoping nobody gets hurt. We're probably going to do some pretty big moves, big spots. But I think it'll be really cool. And I think one of the things that will hopefully separate it from other ladder matches is just the element of having a 500-pound man involved. I think that was something when the match was announced. I think a lot of people were probably thinking, well, how's that going to work? Can Sledge climb a ladder? Can a ladder hold his weight? And we've got some idea. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think the crowd will enjoy what we do. But yeah, this is one of those matches that I've been looking forward to for a long time. We had kind of planted the seeds for this a while ago, and we were hoping to do kind of a little, Hammer Brothers Flamin' Aces thing at PAL for a while. And the original plan was to kind of work 3 matches, essentially. We had the one, and then we were going to work a second one, and then have this one. Spencer got hurt, so that kind of threw a wrench into things. But I'm super excited. I can't say enough good things about the Flamin' Aces. Spencer is a terrific talent, really good dude, extremely athletic, really fun to work with. Zay is I would say he might be the toughest guy that I know in wrestling. And I know that's a lot of people might go, what? Zay Perez, the little guy? But he is so incredibly tough, and I love working with him because he'll hit you. He'll hit you hard. He'll lay it in there, and if you hit him back hard, he doesn't complain about it. He's just he kind of he's not a big guy, and people might assume certain things about him, but he is as tough as they come, and I'm proud to call him my friend, and Spencer too. They're both tough dudes, and they're Spencer's had a couple of pretty significant injuries that he's had to overcome. He tore his ACL and fractured his wrist recently, and but he sticks with it. And both those guys are so tough. I'm so proud of them. We came up with them, training at Oregon Pro Wrestling School, and so I think we're gonna have a great match. And I'm one of my regrets probably in wrestling is that we haven't gotten to work them more. There was actually a period there where we had worked them, across the Northwest more than anybody else. But we had to do a lot of babyface versus babyface, which I know this is that same deal, which for me is not usually as fun because the crowd's split and you don't have that same dynamic like I was talking about. I think it's generally ideal for there to be a babyface and a heel. But I think we'll still have a great match. The crowd will be torn. But we have such good chemistry with each other. And one of the things I like about working with those guys is they're down to do anything. You come up with some crazy idea, they're like, yeah, let's do it. A lot of guys you work with, some of the guys that we've had great matches with, they still will say, yeah, I don't want to take that, or it's too much. And there's a time and place for it. I talked earlier about taking care of yourself and like, is it really worth it to do this crazy move for $50 or whatever? But there are moments where it's like, you know what, this is a big match for the belts against guys that we trust, and so we can go a little bit bigger, and I think we will. And I think I'm hopeful that it'll be one of the best matches of our career. Putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, but I think we can do it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, there was one thing that I just found really interesting whenever I was going to the merchandise stands as you're going for like DOA or PAL, is that the wrestlers don't have a like tip jar like laid out. And I feel like if somebody is going to go and spend $25 on a t-shirt and they give you 40, they might actually be inclined to be like, oh, I'll just drop a tip in for them. And that would kind of benefit, counteracting the wage in which you guys get. So like, why don't we see tip jars at wrestlers' merchandise stands?
It's an interesting thought. I was trying to think if I've ever seen anybody do that. We do have fans who will they buy a $25 t-shirt. We've had fans who give us $40 and go, keep the rest. Thanks so much for a great show. We just put that into our money bag or whatever. But it's not a bad thought. I don't know. I think maybe wrestlers feel like it's I think wrestlers always try to maintain or project that they are these superstars, I feel like having a tip jar maybe goes against that a little bit. I don't know, because I could see where maybe somebody's like, oh, it looks like you're like a service worker asking for tips, or maybe a homeless person on the side of the road asking for money. Maybe the optics are not what people are looking for. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
but it's an interesting thought. And like I said, like we don't have a tip jar out, but fans will do that sometimes, where they give us a little extra just because they know that it's tough making money on the indies, and we've had people offer us or give us money for stuff that we don't charge for. Like bigger name people probably charge for like autographs or pictures. We don't. That stuff is free. Like we don't feel like we're big enough stars to be charging people to take pictures with us. And some of it is we want people to have a good time, and if they get a picture with the Hammer Brothers, or get an autograph from the Hammer Brothers, that's special. And we don't want to be like, oh, give us $10 for that, and they go, oh, okay, never mind. You know what I mean? So no, it's an interesting thought though. Maybe somebody will do it. I think who could probably do it, and it would actually really fit the gimmick, is I don't know if you're familiar with Chuko Bum, has wrestled around here a bit. So he has kind of like that homeless guy again. I feel like that would fit right in if you just ask. Maybe he does. I don't know. But, no, it's an interesting thought. That's something I'll probably ask Russell. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up happening, especially because it's a bit harder and harder to make.
Perfect. Oh, that is so awesome. So, like, what do you guys want to accomplish in 2026? I got 2 questions left. That would be one of them.
Sure. 2026. Well, I think a big goal for us this year is to start traveling a little bit more outside of the Pacific Northwest. We have some things coming up in the works that are not technically outside the Northwest, but new companies that we're going to be working for. And I'm hopeful that will lead to some other stuff. As I said, I think we got to do a better job of putting ourselves out there and, contacting some of these companies and going, hey, we'd like to come to your state and work for you. They're not always just going to come to you. We've been working for almost 4 years now, and sometimes, companies come to us, but it's usually in the area. So we got to do a better job of putting ourselves out there. But that's a big goal of ours, I think, is to start. It'd be great to go wrestle in California. Like I mentioned, I think that was one of the kind of unfortunate side effects, I guess, of Prestige going out of business, is that, they had a relationship with some of the companies down in Northern California, Southern California. And so, having a spot with Prestige might have led to getting a spot with one of those companies. And, not that can't happen still, but probably would have been easier if Prestige was still going and you were on the show all the time and all that kind of stuff. But working in California would be nice. Just getting around, getting a little more exposure. That would be good. I think we'd like to this year have some more matches that we're really proud of, and we're off to a good start, because I think the construction site match is probably my favorite match of our career. It might not have been the most technically, whatever, but I think it's by far the most memorable match that we've ever had. The visuals of it, the spots that we did through the plywood and the drywall and the rubble and the dust. So it was just, it was pretty epic. So I think that's my favorite match. I hope that we have some more matches that are super memorable like that. I think 2025, you had asked me about what my favorite match was of 2025. And there were some good ones, but I think even compared to the first 2 years of our career, 2025 was a little bit of a down year for us, just in terms of, match quality, I guess, but also just, I think we got a big push, right off the bat. They put some tag team championship belts on us, and then 2025 was kind of where we came back down to earth a little bit, in the storylines and stuff, where we'd had the belts for a while, and it was kind of time to let some other people, have that spotlight. So there were just, I feel like the companies that we work for, we were sort of put on the back burner a little bit, that's just kind of how wrestling is. I didn't have any problem with that. And I like putting other people over, and because, the company's got to get better too. It's not all about us, So I like working with people, helping them grow, putting them over, which is probably why I like being a heel so much. I kind of miss being a heel because it's fun to put people over and make them look good.
Yes.
But yeah, I think we'd like to maybe get back to the mountaintop a little bit. Some of these companies, and like I said, we're off to a good start. We won the Prestige Tag Team titles, had a great match with the Midnight Heat. We're the POW Tag Team champions right now. Got the belts back here. So I'm hoping this is a year where maybe we are kind of featured a little bit more, and just working for more companies. That's probably the goal of every wrestler, is to just get out there, work for more companies, hopefully level up. Of course, we would love to go work for some big indies, or even if it's not getting signed, because that's, kind of a long shot. Not that it can't happen. I'm always hopeful that will happen. But if we could maybe appear, for an AEW, if they came to Portland or something, and, I know they're coming here pretty soon, but, something down the road, if we could, have a dark match or something, and get, a little bit more exposure. I think both Sledge and I are very confident that if we get an opportunity, if we can just get more eyeballs on our stuff, that people will like what we do. And I think, we have a lot of potential to kind of go viral with our act, with the stuff in the ring, and our promos, but it's just hard when you're, so small time. And I'm not trying to knock, the companies around here. They're wonderful to work for, but, it's not the same as working for like an AEW or a TNA or some of these huge indies all across the country. So, yeah, that would be my main thing, is just try to put ourselves out there more and get the Hammer Brothers brand out there.
That is awesome. Well, I know I brought up to you earlier that I had one more question for you about Tack Hammer.
Yeah.
Is how does it feel being a dad and being a professional wrestler and having all of these matches, all these videos, you and Sledge together? Like, how is it going to feel when he's a little bit older, and kind of show him your guys' entire career and be like, if you have a passion for something, if you love something, you can go after it just like I did my pro wrestling career? Like, how is it going to be able to show him that when he's a little bit older?
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. I think that was a big motivating factor for me when I decided to get back into wrestling. Was, I knew that, I think when we made the decision to start, getting ready to go to wrestling school and train, my son was on the way, and I just thought, how cool would this be if we could go do this thing and have a good little career, even if we don't make it big, whatever. We're having so much fun even now, just getting to do it together. And yeah, I thought, man, my son, if his dad and his uncle are wrestlers, even if we're indie wrestlers, I think that's going to be super cool. My hope would be that he'd kind of look at us like we're superheroes. And that's why I think that moment at Roseland was so special. And, that's a great, I like that, the point that you make, that it's not that I want him to like follow in our footsteps and be a wrestler. If he wants to do that, that's awesome. But it's more just following your dreams sort of a thing. I never really thought that I would be a wrestler. I grew up watching it. I loved it, but it seemed so out of reach to me that I never really considered actually going for it. And that's a regret that I have. I wish that it had been on my radar a little earlier, and maybe if I had pursued it, from a younger age, maybe by the time I was the age I am now, we would have, gone somewhere, made it. Who knows, because I think we have some skills and some talent that, could take us pretty far in the business. But yeah, I hope that he sees this, later on when he's older, when he looks back on it. I hope that, it is kind of, that we set an example of following your dreams and pursuing the things that you love. I went to college, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, and just kind of picked a major and decided, maybe I'll like this. And there were things that I think I would have really enjoyed doing that I didn't pursue because I thought I wasn't good enough, or, it was something that, oh, well, only famous people can do that, and I'll never be that. And now I wish that I had, because I've, I've actually met, in wrestling, I've met some people that were pretty famous that, were in WWE, and I watched them on TV when I was growing up, and I met these people, and you realize when you meet them in real life that they're just people like you. Like, there's nothing, they're not aliens. There's nothing, they have talent and stuff, but they went out and they did it. They pursued their dream, and you're never gonna make it if you don't try. And I think when I was younger, unfortunately, I just didn't try, to do some of this stuff, because it felt like, I'm probably not good enough to make that happen or whatever. So yeah, I think it's special. It's one of those things where I'm glad that we did this, for him. I did a lot of, getting into wrestling. I'm very passionate about it. That I can yap and yap and yap about wrestling. There's so much about it that's so fascinating to me, and I really enjoy, doing it. But a lot of getting into this again was doing it for my brother, doing it for my son, and I just thought it would be special for them. So yeah, I don't know if Tackhammer is interested in getting into wrestling. If he is, cool. I'm always going to be the dad who's like, whatever you like, you go for it, buddy. It doesn't have to be what I like. I want you to be your own person. He seems like a pretty musical kid, so he might get into music, and that's something that I've always loved music, but I played a lot of sports growing up and just didn't have a lot of time for that. So if he's into that, cool. I could kind of live vicariously through him. But if he gets into wrestling, cool. I'm always going to be kind of a little bit of a helicopter dad. So I think I'd be kind of nervous about him getting hurt or whatever. But, I want him to pursue his dreams. So if that's wrestling, if that's something else, I hope he goes for it. And I hope that we set a good example for him to do that.
That is so freaking awesome. Well, dude, I cannot thank you enough. I mean, like, we've had multiple conversations, and every single time it is just an absolute pleasure to sit down with you and just pick apart your mind when it comes to pro wrestling. So thank you very much for all of the opportunities.
Thanks, Cody. This is, I love coming on here. Gosh, if we could have a weekly podcast, I'd probably do it with you. It's so fun to talk wrestling, and you do such a great job with this, and it's really cool that so many local wrestlers come on here and talk with you, and you get so many different perspectives and stories, and it's kind of like what you see like WWE do, or like, I watch quite a bit of there's so many podcasts out there, but like, The Undertaker had that podcast for a while, or the Stone Cold one, and it's so fascinating to hear those stories. And so to do that at this level, is fun too. It makes the wrestlers feel like stars. So thank you for that. I tell people, I'm going on this podcast, I'm getting interviewed by somebody, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're like a huge star. It's like, I feel like one a little bit when I do things. It's super fun. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this, and everybody else who's come on the show. I know they all appreciate it. We're all passionate about wrestling. We wouldn't be doing this if we weren't, because there's not a lot of glamour in it. At this level, you're not making a ton of money. We don't live in mansions. We show up, and we're helping set up the venue and setting up our own merch stands and all that kind of stuff. It's very DIY. So it's cool to feel important every once in a while. So thank you.
Of course. No problem. Well, I cannot wait to see you when you return back to Independence, and we're definitely going to have to get together later on and have another one.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cody.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, buddy.
Well, all right, you guys. So that was Interesting's podcast interview with Jackhammer. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you guys get notified whenever I upload content. Make sure to go and follow me on social media at CodyT503. That's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I hope you have a very good night, and I'll catch you guys later.